Singapore's presidential election is heating up. Former ambassador to Morocco George Goh is the latest to announce his ambition to contest. The 63-year-old and father of four is also the chairman of Ossia International, and that's a footwear and fashion retailer listed on the Singapore Exchange. Mr. Goh is perhaps better known as the founder of Harvey Norman Ossia, as well as deputy chairman of Pertama Holdings, an investment company. In all, he has owned more than 100 companies over the past 4 decades. Mr. Goh issued a statement saying he's running for president as he does not want to see another uncontested election, like in 2017. Mr. Goh's bid comes just 4 days after Senior Minister Tharman Shanmugaratnam said he would run for the presidency. Just yesterday, Mr. Tharman said he wanted a contest. Mr. Goh explains he is offering himself as an independent candidate to maintain the integrity of the high office and to be perceived as being above politics. Mr. Goh says the senior minister is closely aligned with the ruling political party, which raises questions if Mr. Tharman will be the right man for the presidency. Applications for Singapore's elected presidency open tomorrow. The Elections Department says anyone seeking the top job will have to apply for a certificate of eligibility. A committee decides if they meet the relevant public or private sector requirements. Candidates must also declare if they belong to the Chinese, Malay, Indian or other minority communities. While this upcoming presidential election is not reserved for any particular minority group, the declaration will determine when the next reserved poll will be. Applications will close 5 days after the writ of election is issued. The current president's term expires on the 13th of September. Well, let's get more now on the presidential election. We're going to be speaking with Associate Professor Eugene Tan. He is from the School of Law at Singapore Management University.
Prof. Tan, thank you for coming into the studios to talk to us tonight about this. George Goh has given some reasons for stating his ambition to contest in the upcoming elections. I mean, he's spoken about things which he says are his qualities: truly independent person, a person with a pair of fresh eyes, as an example, to play that role, were he to be considered eligible to contest in the first place. What do you make of those reasons?
Well, Don, I think he has come out with all guns blazing, and he clearly has Mr. Tharman, within his crosshairs. He's clearly seeking to differentiate himself from Mr. Tharman, and he's making the case, that he will be a truly independent candidate. But I think he may overstate his claims. I think simply because, anyone who seeks to run, for the highest office, will have to resign, from their party affiliations. And we often forget, that the president will take an oath of office, where he or she will pledge, bear allegiance to the Constitution, and to exercise his or her duties without fear or favor. But I think, this is all in the nature, of a contest. But I think what is clear where Mr. Goh is concerned is that, he's seeking, right, to differentiate himself, to paint himself as a complete contrast, to Mr. Tharman Shanmugaratnam.
There are some who clearly might prefer a non-partisan candidate. How far do you think, in your view, that this sentiment will play into the presidential contest?
I think that sentiment, may be very important for some voters. It may not be so if, for example, they are persuaded, that Mr. Tharman, despite his long association with the ruling party, would be able to exercise his duties, with the independence of mind without fear or favor. So it remains to be seen, but certainly, what we can tell on the campaign trail is that, Mr. Tharman will have to persuade voters, that he will be able to get the job done, and perhaps even argue that because, he has been on the other side, he would be able, to know how the government works, and so, will be able to facilitate the functions of government without unnecessarily, getting in the way. So we shouldn't overstate, this quality of independence, right? Because in a way, Mr. Goh may have put himself as being, that I'm going to stand up against the government, right? And it could be a case where that may not be necessary, particularly if the government, in making certain key decisions that involves the president custodial powers, will be acting within the Constitution.
Let's dial it back a little bit, Prof. Tan, because there's also the issue of the qualifying criteria, which is rather onerous. Do you think, based upon what you've seen of his profile, because we've all been reading about the details, and anyone who didn't know who was behind Harvey Norman knows who it is today, can Mr. Goh actually meet that qualifying criteria as it stands?
I think based on the limited information that he has provided, I think it would appear, that he probably will not meet the eligibility, the objective eligibility requirement, which is that he has run a company, a profitable $500 million company for at least 3 years. So he has instead focused on the fact that he has owned, a stable of companies, over the last 4 decades. And that, the collective market capitalization is about $3 billion. Now, so this will pose the interesting question, to the Presidential Elections Committee, who will be the body, that will decide whether Mr. Goh ought to receive a certificate of eligibility. And so in this regard, here we are looking at Mr. Goh, arguing, right? I think he will have to argue that the fact that he has owned these stable of companies, worth about $3 billion over the years, that he has the experience and ability, that is comparable to someone who runs a profitable company for $500 million shareholder equity. So I think if Mr. Goh proceeds with his application, I think the PEC, the Presidential Elections Committee, will have to consider, right, whether the owning, this set of companies, would be equivalent, to someone who is running, a significant company of $500 million.
Prof, the president is important. He is a symbol, a unifier of multiracial and diverse Singapore. So we've got Mr. Tharman, who is a politician, and then we've got Mr. Goh, who's the businessman. How important will their backgrounds be when they try to differentiate themselves in the campaigning? Because there aren't any actual policies to be debated.
No, I think that's an excellent point, Jill. I think the backgrounds are important, insofar as signalling, their ability and their experience. But the campaign cannot just dwell on what they have done. I think the campaign must certainly talk about how, based on their experience and their ability, they see their role, as a symbol of national unity. How are they going to ensure, that the government of the day, the elected government of the day, which is where the power center is, that they will be able to get on, with their role of governing, without the presidency, unnecessarily getting into the way. So I think in the end, the Constitution recognizes that people can come from the public or the private sectors, and each will have different strengths. But I wouldn't say that, one set of experience or ability will be superior to the other. It's really, that combination and being able to persuade voters that they are the best person, that he is the best person for the job.
And it is going to be about that. Who is the best person? Well, since Mr. Tharman announced his intention to run, there's been a lot of speculation. Everyone's had an opinion about what his chances might be and so on. And now we have a second person signalling their intention. Mr. Tharman has been described as a formidable candidate. Would you think that it's possible that few other candidates are going to enter the ring now? I mean, are we going to see more sort of turning up? And what might happen if we were to see more individuals going forward?
First, I wouldn't exclude that there could be more individuals, right? Someone could be inspired by, Mr. Goh's example, and could own a stable of companies and say, hey, maybe I should throw my hat into the ring. But I think they need to articulate why they want to do the job, right? It is not just to be an independent person, but we shouldn't exclude the possibility that, this time round, there could be a fair amount of interest. I think the political climate is evolving and voters are eager to give eligible candidates a fair hearing. And we mustn't forget, right, in the 2011 edition of the presidential election, 4 applicants received a certificate of eligibility, and that was a very contested election. But of course, I don't anticipate this year's election to be all that contested. The rules have changed, in order to maintain the dignity of the office, right? And as Jill had pointed out earlier, the presidency doesn't set policies, right? It is more of a reactive check and balance mechanism in our system of government.
So how do you think this round of elections might be different from past, especially when many of the voters are young? They haven't had the opportunity to vote for a president before?
Yes, because the last time Singaporeans went to the poll for a presidential election was 2011. So some of the voters in their early 30s, would be voting in the presidential election for the first time. I think for many Singaporeans, being able to vote is an important demonstration of for democracy for them, right? The ability to exercise your democratic choice and to determine, in their own assessment, who they think is the best person for the job. And I think that will create greater awareness and understanding of, what the office does, what it doesn't do, and how, the office helps to strengthen our system of governance. So I think the enthusiasm, that we have been witnessing so far, I think is very positive, for the elected presidency as well as our system of government as a whole. So I think we hope that, there will be more than one applicant, who will meet the eligibility requirement and get the certificate of eligibility that will enable them to contest this September.
Well, we will see indeed. Thank you so much, Associate Professor Eugene Tan from SMU, joining us today. Thanks for your thoughts.
Thank you.